In the immediate aftermath of the Holocaust, the Jewish civilization faced a severe biological and intellectual calculation. After being pushed to the very brink of total annihilation, they had to determine exactly how to ensure their physical survival moving forward. The religious establishment responded to this vulnerability by completely withdrawing. They doubled down on an ideology derived from a medieval mystical movement known as Kabbalah, instructing their communities to wait passively for supernatural miracles rather than taking physical action. This mystical theology gave rise to the cult of the tzaddik, a system built around supposedly infallible spiritual leaders. It actively stripped the population of their rational agency, demanding absolute submission to rabbinic authority, while outsourcing real-world problems to magic charms and rituals. This passive dependency contradicts the historical record. Classical Judaism was an entirely different structure. It operated strictly as a rational, action-oriented legal framework requiring intense personal responsibility. The definitive codification of this framework was established in the 12th century by Maimonides. He engineered Judaism as a highly accessible system of objective jurisprudence. It was an empirical constitution, completely devoid of subjective spiritual feelings. The modern ultra-Orthodox system is actively practicing a mutated religion. By smuggling practices like astrology and demonology back into mainstream use, they created a pagan-adjacent dependency that enforces absolute submission to human leaders over obedience to objective law. During the long centuries of exile, the religion was infected by a profound stupor. Recovering from that intellectual disease demands a return to reality. Absolute physical sovereignty is now both a biological necessity for survival and a strict legal requirement. Without a sovereign state to enforce the law, religious elites spent the exile hoarding esoteric texts. By claiming exclusive access to hidden mystical truths, they successfully subjugated a public that could no longer read or verify the legal code for themselves. Maimonides established a strict and uncompromising legal baseline. True adherence to the Torah is entirely impossible as long as the nation's legal system remains subordinate to the jurisdiction of a foreign power. Curing this exilic subjugation requires a mechanical, empirical process. Scholars must parse physical texts, analyze historical syntax, and verify legal precedents, bypassing subjective mystical feelings entirely. This process of textual restoration became physically possible due to a massive geopolitical shift. The ingathering of exiles to the land of Israel allowed modern researchers to finally access ancient, uncorrupted manuscripts safeguarded by Middle Eastern and Yemenite communities. A mathematically precise legal text is entirely useless if the citizens it governs remain intellectually subservient to human authority. Territorial sovereignty and physical independence are the absolute prerequisites required to enforce the law. In the decades following the Holocaust, the religious establishment constructed a complete architecture of dependency. This institutional model specifically engineered a defenseless underclass to maintain authoritarian control. This matrix measures modern actions against classical law. While classical law mandates defense, Haredi leaders demand mass exemptions. Second, Maimonides ruled that relying on public subsidies for study desecrates God's name. Finally, refusing secular education violates the theological mandate to understand the cosmos. The early secular Zionist founders formally rebelled against this exact passive system. They abandoned exilic mysticism and chose to take highly practical, physical action in the real world. These secular pioneers immediately entered the workforce. They embraced hard agricultural labor and actively pursued scientific education to build a self-sustaining economy. They took up arms and built a formal military apparatus, securing their physical sovereignty and fulfilling the exact legal requirements of the obligatory defensive war. This creates a profound historical irony. By rebelling to build a purely secular state, the early Zionists accidentally executed the precise operational mandates of classical Maimonidean law, physically saving the civilization in the process. The long centuries of exile clouded the concept of the Messianic era with heavy delusions. The masses cultivated an expectation of a supernatural figure who would magically solve complex geopolitical problems. Kabbalistic theology mutated this concept into a pagan-adjacent expectation. It's centered on a divine being who would alter the laws of physics, perform spontaneous miracles, and resurrect the dead. Waiting for a magical intervention serves a highly practical purpose for the religious elite. It provides a theological excuse to absolve their community from the dangerous physical work of building and defending an actual civilization. Maimonides provides the actual legal definition of the Messianic era. He explicitly rules that this period features zero changes to the natural world or the laws of physics. It is completely grounded in physical permanence. The classical Messiah is strictly a mortal political king. He is an executive leader tasked entirely with the material reconstruction of the state. His specific job requirements leave no room for spiritual parlor tricks. He must fight physical defensive wars, successfully secure national borders against enemies, and restore objective jurisprudence over a specific geography. The role requires executing complex economic legislation. He must re-establish the macroeconomic and agricultural laws of the land, implementing the Shemitah and Yovel, cyclical sabbatical years that act as a required national economic reset. The Messianic era requires zero supernatural intervention to achieve. It is a secular, geopolitical reality built entirely on rational law, and its success is judged purely by tangible, physical victories. The modern state of Israel successfully secured national independence, but sovereign power is not an end in itself. Its ultimate purpose is not global domination or the subjugation of other nations. The true geopolitical objective of the Maimonidean state is to secure an enduring systemic peace. This legal infrastructure is designed to completely eliminate the material distractions of war, famine, and systemic oppression. In this secure and stable environment, human competitive ambition is legally structured to shift completely away from physical conquest. Relieved of the burden of constant survival, the society is finally free to channel its vast resources into deep intellectual and scientific exploration. A free nation governed by objective, rational law and permanently liberated from tyrannical suppression is the only environment where humanity can successfully pursue the ultimate scientific knowledge of God. The ultimate constitutional cure for an exiled civilization is anchored to a specific geographic center, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. This centralizes the law in one highly transparent location. At this epicenter sits an absolute separation of powers. The king, the high priest, and the judges are all equally subordinate to the exact same legal code. No individual stands above the Constitution. The crowning achievement of independence is the reinstitution of the Great Sanhedrin, the 71-judge Supreme Court, closing the loop on Maimonides' judicial reform. The physical restoration of transparent, objective law is the rational triumph of a 3,000-year civilization. It is the definitive threshold the modern state is now preparing to cross.